So Keir Starmer has arrived in Washington for his first NATO summit. He will meet with world leaders for the alliance's 75th anniversary.
Well, that's as the Prime Minister remains committed to increasing defence spending to 2.5% of GDP following a review into the country's military capabilities.
Now, reports suggest that he could also boost the size of the army in a bid to tackle foreign aggressors. Joining us now from our Westminster studio is our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Olivia, good morning to you. Big day for the PM.
Huge day for the PM. This is his first chance, and it's come very early on, to prove himself on the international stage. Back here in the UK, all of the focus is on defence spending. General Sir Patrick Sanders, the outgoing head of the army, has warned Keir Starmer that unless he increases defence spending, then Britain is currently only in a position where it could fight a small war for about a month. He says that the armed forces need to be massively increased. Now, Keir Starmer has said that he will increase defence spending by 2.5%, but he hasn't promised to do it in this Parliament. And over the election, that was a sticking point between the two leaders. Rishi Sunak said that he would increase it by 2.5% in this Parliament. Obviously, he is not Prime Minister, so that's a bit of a moot point. General Sir Patrick Sanders also said that 2.5% wouldn't really be enough. It would need to be closer to 3% to increase the size of the army to the level where it needs to be. Well, Keir Starmer has promised a strategic defence review, which we'll start hearing about from today, and it's thought that that might include an expansion of the armed forces. But with no money behind it as yet, it's hard to see how that's going to work.
Olivia Utley, with that, thanks very much indeed. And we will be crossing to the Shadow Defence Secretary, James Cartlidge, for his reaction to all of this. Good morning, good to see you. Your reaction then to this kind of ruling out of any change to our defence spending in Starmer's first term. Although that commitment is there, no actual sort of timetable for it as yet.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head. There's no timetable. There's no plan, actually. This was an amazing opportunity for the Prime Minister to go to the Washington summit, which is about NATO after all, and to set out very clearly a timetable to get to 2.5% spending of GDP on defence, because we need that as a country. That would have sent an incredibly powerful signal to our potential adversaries, like in Russia. Whereas instead, we now have huge uncertainty. For the people who run our armed forces, they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know when we're going to get to 2.5%. If we're going to get there, will it be after a spending review or before? These are all now huge questions. What they needed to know was when we'd get there so that they could plan, ensure they have the best capability for our armed forces, which in this dangerous world we find ourselves would have been the right thing to do. So I'm very disappointed in this delay, and I think it will be damaging for our armed forces.
Saying then that the defence budget has got to be taken out separately, got to be looked at differently. We're not dealing with health here, we're not dealing with roads, we're not dealing with education, that we've got to say this is extraordinary, this is extreme, and it needs extraordinary spending.
I think exactly. We need to see defence as something which is now almost above politics. I mean, and you know, as Shadow Defence Secretary, I'd be delighted to work with Labour in the national interest, and we will of course be doing that when it comes to supporting Ukraine, as to be fair, they've done with us. But I think on this point, on getting to 2.5%, they could have been clear today. They could have sent that really powerful signal. Instead, we've just got dither and delay, and I think that will be damaging for the armed forces. You know, we had a plan that was fully funded. People may not have agreed with it, but we would have, for example, reduced the civil service back to the size it was before the pandemic. So getting to 2.5% was a priority for us. It was funded. Whereas now we have this long delay. We don't know how long it will go on for. And this big question for the chiefs, the people who run the armed forces, what will it mean for their key programs, those capabilities? Because the other point, in line with what you just asked, is those programs in defence, they take years to deliver some of them. Will this, for example, delay some of them? That's what would concern me. So I think this is the wrong decision. And I think a real missed opportunity to send a very powerful signal at the NATO summit.
OK, I want to talk about the Tories now. We saw Rishi Sunak for the first time since his historic defeat last week, the worst in nearly 200 years. He was vowing that the Conservatives would form an effective and professional opposition. And yet we're no clear about exactly what the opposition is going to look like. Lots of infighting going on. And we've got the most powerful Conservative in the country, Ben Houchin, describing Suella Braverman with her comments yesterday, being beamed in from America to the PopCon conference, saying that the Pride flag flag was monstrous. Well, Ben Houchen says she's frankly unsuitable to lead the country and far too divisive. Doesn't look very effective and professional from where I'm standing just yet.
Well, we do want to be an effective opposition. We have a constitutional role to perform, which is to hold the government to account. That's why I'm standing in front of your camera talking to you about defence spending. I think it's a matter of profound national interest, and I'm happy to be here doing that. In terms of, what you've heard from potential contenders in the leadership race and so on, obviously our priority is to now establish a process to get to a leadership election, and I hope that we have a debate as a party in a constructive manner, because there needs to be two parts of that. We need to look back at the election and work out where it went wrong. You're right, it was a terrible result, and we need to analyse all the data, work out what we could have done differently perhaps, but above all we then need to have that discussion as a party about our future so that we make the right decision and take our time over it in electing the best person possible to present a positive alternative to Labour.
And who would be the best person possible in your view?
Well, we don't know who the candidates are yet, and I think we should sort of, as I said, the key phrase, take our time. So I won't be committing. I will be going to the hustings when they eventually happen to hear what the candidates have to say, and then I will make a decision. I think that's what everybody should do.
It's clear from your shadow cabinet colleagues who's sort of shuffling, or if you'd like to use the media lingo for it all, on manoeuvres. You had Kemi Badenoch making a swipe at her leader, Rishi Sunak. We've got, as I said, these comments from Suella Braverman. I mean, you might not want to talk about it, but it's quite clear who the runners and riders are. Well, we'll see, because obviously there's no formal contest yet. I'm pleased to say we held the election yesterday for the new chair of the 1922 committee. Bob Blackman has been elected, so he will now oversee the 1922 committee, engaging with MPs, including myself and my colleagues, to work out what the best timetable is so that we can then have that election. And look, I'm not naive. Clearly, in that time, there's going to be lots of noises off, lots of discussion. But as I say, our role now is first and foremost to deliver national interest, which is to get an effective opposition in place to hold the government to account. And just a quick point, because we've been talking about professionalism. There was some criticism of the way those elections for the 1922 committee were taken last night. What was your experience of it? Because a lot of people are saying that they weren't even able to cast their vote.
Well, I didn't hear that. I mean, I think one colleague did mention that. I think it was Mark Francois. I attended the hustings. We had the presentations from the two candidates. The room was pretty full of colleagues, so most had clearly got the message. I can't speak for other colleagues who, for one reason or other, perhaps didn't get the message. But either way, we held the election effectively. We had a good turnout from colleagues, and we had a result which sees Bob Blackman elected, and hopefully he can now do that important work with the 1922 committee of establishing the rules so that we can go forward and hold our leadership election. And my plea is that we do it in a constructive way, because that's what the public want to see. When I canvassed, I knocked on hundreds of doors during the election. People who were either voting for us reluctantly or weren't going to vote for us, they wanted us to end that sort of argument and infighting. They want to see a united Conservative Party. That's what I want to see. And so the best way to do that is let's get the rules in place, let's have that leadership debate, but let's do it in a constructive way so that we can then be a genuine, positive alternative to Labour, and in the interim, which is our constitutional role, holding this government to account.
James Cartlidge is the Shadow Defence Secretary. Thanks for your time this morning. Thank you. We'll leave it there.
You're more than welcome.